Welcome to the AngelScapes podcast, where you're encouraged to uncover and develop a direct connection with your soul's power, wisdom, and spiritual intuition that is ready to blossom. We'll explore new ideas, compelling tips, and real steps to help you learn simple spiritual practices. We're a safe place to learn more about accessing your soul's power with education and spiritual wholeness that could bring more clarity to your life. Now here's your host, a practicing medium, Akashic Records practitioner, spirit artist, coach, and mentor, Dr. Reverend Nancy Smith.
Who sits at your table during the holidays? Are they ghosts from the past? And who do you really want to have sit at your table? Who do you really want to invite? This is AngelScapes, and I'm your host, Nancy Smith. And joining me is medium Raylene Sousa for a comforting talk about learning how to sit with grief at your table during the holidays. You know what I mean when you have a lot of guests coming in or you're talking to a lot of people and there's a lot of socialization and that special someone just isn't there, the person that's deepest in your heart is far, far away. We often miss those who can't be with us, and we miss them more than ever when it's on the holidays. And what we really want is to hear them tell us that they love us, or we want to just tell them that we love them. So Raylene Sousa is a spiritual medium, intuitive, psychic, and ordained minister. She's a Reiki practitioner. She's a Reiki master, teacher, and she's a published author. We're going to have to ask her about her book in a minute. Guided by light, love, and integrity, Raylene's sense of humor, compassion, and love of humanity enhances her abilities as a medium to be a conduit for spirit. As a naturally born medium, communicating with people in the world of spirit since she was a child, Raylene strives to empower others to add those tools to their spiritual toolbox. Although she studied with respected teachers from New England and the UK, you'll always hear Raylene saying spirit is her best teacher. So welcome, Raylene, to the show. Really happy to have you on.
Thanks for having me, and hello, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be on here tonight with you. Thank you. Thank you.
You are so welcome. We have these great chats when we get on the phone or something. Really, we just talk for like hours, and it's really kind of fun. I think we're a little bit soul sisters there. So
I agree. It's nice when you have someone that you can kind of like, a different group of people that you can just really share thoughts with. And one thought opens to another thought and opens to another thought, because we're really all in this together, as people, and supporting each other and going through the holidays and going through the tough times, And I find that when I talk with people, it's not always the first holiday where their circumstances have changed, but it's even like, a lot of times the second holiday is the worst, where they're missing someone. It kind of hits hard because the shock wears off, and a lot of other stages of grief transpire, and each journey is unique to the person.
Yeah. I have often said, and I've observed, that the second year is actually harder than the first year, because the first year is so painful. But you said you're in shock a little bit and you're kind of you're stumbling around. But then when the second year and you're regrouping and you're going back to old traditions, that's when it hits you, because you're just like, what, something's missing, or that person's missing, or something like that. But Raylene, let's talk.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and I do think what's really challenging is that the other people that you traditionally gather with sometimes don't know if they should approach the topic of the empty seat or not. And I think it's nice to understand that there are ways to honor your loved one, and you can open up that conversation. And I think it really brings a lot of peace to most people gathered.
There's a lot of traditions. Speaking of, you see the empty seat, or the person always used to sit in that chair and somebody else is sitting there now. There's a lot of family traditions that people do to honor somebody who's not there. That we're talking about somebody who's passed on. There's other contexts to talk about the person who you had a fight with, or you just, the relationship fell apart. But and I've seen people set a place for the person that they're missing, or they take a plate of their favorite foods and they set it to the side, but they make a gesture or a routine or something symbolic that says, I know you're here and I miss you, kind of thing.
Yes.
Have
And
you
it's
heard of
nice
some
because
tradition? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I've heard of people like, lighting a candle, setting an intention, or everyone going around the table and sharing a story and a memory of that
I
person.
love
And a
that.
lot of
Yeah.
times using humor to do it. Do you remember when? And as the years go by, I think the
Yeah.
humor gets brought in a little bit more, but also reminds people that they have joy in the moments and they can still laugh and still feel. And
Right.
I know that the spirit world themselves truly love to hear their name said, to have people think of them
Yeah.
and call them in closer. Like we invite people to come in the physical world. It's so nice when people take the time to invite people from the spirit world to continue to come in and join us. I have seen people also volunteer or make a donation in that person's name, to a
Yeah.
charity they
Yeah.
may have
Yeah.
supported. If somebody was like an animal lover, maybe a rescue league. And another thing too is maybe a special ornament, or
Absolutely.
some put up the favorite decorations and some don't. Whether you take them out and put them up or you keep them boxed for the year, I think it's really important to honor yourself and honor where you're at. I think
Yeah. I
there's
think,
no
yeah.
rules to how to grieve.
There's
I
only what's
think,
in your heart that you need. Some people need
yeah,
to get together with other people, and some people continue to stay isolated. And I feel that whatever works for you, whatever works for you. But at some point, I think I want to point out that grief, and the huge emotions, and you see this all the time, Raylene, is we isolate ourselves with the pain. And we feel that we're alone. Nobody else could possibly feel the way that we feel, and that we just can't participate in social functions, especially when it's a holiday or where everyone's supposed to be happy. But you know what? When you're with people who really love you, and care about you and know what you're going through, I have a sense of the compassion from other people. Like, let you be quiet, give you that gentle appreciation, or you can give the person who's grieving that gentle appreciation. So you're pulling them out of their isolation, but in the meantime,
yeah.
and you're inviting them to very gently be with you without expecting them to be the highlight of the party or something. But
No, and I think that's okay too. It's like to let people have a plan A or plan B. They can say yes and accept it, but don't guilt them if they're really not comfortable in that moment, or they decide they want to leave early. Just give them that big hug and maybe go back with them and just sit in the quiet with them and give them some
mm,
support. I think that's the
mm,
thing, is like people don't know what to do to help other people when they see them hurting, especially when it's the loss of a child. And then what I see and what my concerns can be at times is the siblings, for the
oh
children
yeah,
that are here when their brother or sister has
oh yeah,
transitioned.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
tough
yeah,
because
oh
they
yeah,
need to, I would love for people to just consider keeping them in the loop in the family discussions, or how do we want to do Christmas this year? Do we want to take a trip? Maybe do a
hmm,
train ride, do something different, maybe go to a friend's house and not be
yeah,
home. I think
yes.
there's a lot of things. Maybe go sledding on, Christmas Day, and maybe change the day of your holiday,
And new
you know?
traditions. Yeah, I knew a family who lost
Yes.
the mother passed it just before Thanksgiving. And it was very difficult. And they started a new family tradition of just going somewhere amazing, Mexico or on a cruise or something. It was such a shock to lose their mother. But over the years of going on these Thanksgiving Day trips, they started a new family tradition that pulled that family together in kind of a new way. So new family traditions are perfectly acceptable and not surprising if you start a new transition. Um, I want to go back a little bit and talk about how when we're in grief, we isolate ourselves because we don't know what else to do. That's a common reaction. But as we isolate ourselves, it's kind of like you're kind of biting your nose off to spite your face. You're not allowing in any kind of love or support, or you're just really believing that you are alone. So as you isolate yourself, you're kind of confirming that you are alone. And but as mediums, Raylene, we know that you're not alone. And
Right.
how can in a a time of grief, especially when it's a like anniversary, birthday, or holiday, Hanukkah, or what, or anything, how can people who are in deep pain remind themselves that they're not alone and that spirit is around them? I'm sure you've talked about this hundreds of times with
Well, I
clients.
think I think one key thing about how do we look at being alone and realizing that to trust spirit that there's life after life. All seven major religions of the world believe that. With mediumship, the hope is the sacred communication will help to validate it.
Yeah.
So in that understanding, but even when you take that time alone, it could seem like isolating, but if you're taking steps for some self-care and some time for
Mhm.
you,
Mhm.
it could be key in your healing too. So maybe
Yes.
just honor yourself, and you want to stay in your pajamas all day, just do it. Take a nice hot
Yeah.
bath, maybe, journal and write, and it's what you do with your time. I think what's hard for people when they're grieving, and I know I've experienced it myself when I've had loss in my life, that you still got to go to the grocery store and you're
Mhm.
doing all that stuff, and it feels like life is just passing right by you, and it's like you want to go,
Mm.
wait, I just lost, or I just, or
Yeah.
even if it's something celebratory, people get that feeling like life, you know life has had such a big shift for
Yeah.
me, but everybody's going
Yeah.
about their stuff, but especially with loss, they're not aware, because with grief, you know you're not really wearing a sign on you to let everybody know, it's not like a broken leg. You can't, it's, so I think it's that's where the ripple effect of kindness comes in, that hopefully people
Mhm.
will move forward and be kind to that person, whether it's a cashier that's taking their time doing something, or it's someone in line that's fumbling to get their credit card out. It's like
Right.
being patient, because you really don't know what happened in that person's day.
You don't.
And you can even make them
Yeah.
feel more isolated. We talk about
Yeah.
self-isolating, but I think they can just get that feeling of isolation because they're in a different place,
Oh, I saw what you mean. I remember being in shock a couple of times from losing people, and just you step out and the world needs to freeze. I just need everything to stop so I could be in that moment, because I don't want time to go away from the person who's not here anymore. I just want to stay in this moment as if they're going to be here in 2 seconds. And I remember having that feeling of like almost disassociation or disconnect, and I wanted everyone to just slow down. And I guess in some ways I had to give it time. I remember just having to, I do need to walk a little more slowly. I do need to get those groceries. I do need to do those self-care things, but I don't really feel like it. I don't really want to. And I was talking about isolation too. I think it's a mindset. In the grief process, sitting alone and being alone, and just quietly realizing that you can step into a new relationship to the person that you've lost on spirit side. It's
Yes,
going to take a long
yes.
time. Well, it's going to take as long as you need it to take, actually. But as you sit quietly and you remember your loved one, you're connecting to them. When you look at the pictures, when you remember the stories, you're connecting to them. And take a moment of just deep breathing or a sigh, and just imagine that they're putting their hand on your hand, or imagine the time they touched your cheek, or anything like that. And eventually you'll feel like, I'm making this up, this isn't real, but it is real. It is spirit. They're coming through, and their vibration is really surrounding you and loving you and helping you. And it takes time when you're in that deep grief to kind of break through. But when you are sitting alone, take 2 seconds. Just take 2 seconds and just say, "And they are here with me in a new way, in a way that I never thought of before." Does that make
And I
sense,
think it's
Raylene?
important that people understand in that moment. Some people have a hard time verbalizing or articulating their words that way, but that's where journaling can help them, or not even like journaling, like a habitual thing.
Mm,
Pick up a piece of paper and a pen and write a letter to your loved
yeah,
one. And
yeah,
might just feel them coming closer. A lot of times in sessions, especially when an apology comes in from someone who transitioned to spirit to someone here, to say, hey, I'm sorry, they'll bring up an event or something, and then the person will go, tell them they don't have to be sorry, I love them too. And I'm like, they don't
mm,
need me. They don't need, they only, just a tool. They just come in so I can share their thought with you, because grief can overwhelm. And like you said a minute ago, take a breath, because a lot of people said to me, you know, my my mom's name was, say, Mary. And I was at the store the other day and I could smell this strong perfume. And I was like, it was like what my mother wore. And I heard somebody go, "Hey, Mary." And she's like, "Do you think?" And I'm like, "Do you think? I don't know what her perfume is, but you did. You had that sense and feeling." And that's when I talk about the whole spiritual toolbox, is that we're born with these tools to have this
Mhm.
greater awareness. We can sense things and not just sense them, say, in a traditional sense, but in a
Yeah.
aha kind of moment. And I think it's just acknowledging it and honoring it. So many times we try to reason things, and the
Yeah. Don't
why
don't
on
reason it. Yeah.
different levels, the why can cause issues, or the why
Yeah.
can trip us up. And it's kind of like just sitting it, and accept it. And I think too, just sitting down, there are some people who, spirit will come in and say, she's, I see her sleeping in my t-shirt. And the person goes, "Oh, I am sleeping in their t-shirt." Well, how do you know, right? So, but and sometimes,
Mm.
why are you wearing that garment? Because you feel closer, because you feel that time stamp, that energy, and I think it's just a beautiful thing, because they
Mm.
also know you
Mhm.
are. So
Exactly.
by
Yeah.
keeping a conversation going and not looking at death like it's an ending or something final, I'd love to change it in the dictionary, but that's not gonna happen, you know?
No, I
I'd
know,
love to change
but
that, the term.
it's a change that you can't go back from. There's no negotiating this change. There truly are on the other side. You truly do need to build a new kind of relationship with them, and it's totally possible. And you were saying you have those spiritual tools in your toolbox, but we don't know that we have those tools until we need them. And this time of grieving is your time to take a moment to say, what tools do I have to get through this? And your intuition is there with you. Your thoughts are there with you. Just ask, and it'll occur to you. There's a family that lost somebody that they loved. I went to the house and brought in spirit, did a demonstration and read for everyone. And the daughter, they're adult children, so they had lost their father. One of the daughters was in tears, and she couldn't say anything, where her sister was talking about, I have these dreams about dad all the time, and he's here and here. And then the brother was talking about, oh, I could smell him. He always used to burn the such and such, and I could just come in the kitchen, and it's like I smell his cooking. And towards the end, she just was pulling away and almost kind of angry. And I asked her, so what do you think of all this? And she says, well, I don't have any dreams. I don't smell anything. I don't have any connection to him whatsoever. I just miss him a lot. And this is oh my gosh, I just wanted to bring her up into my arms and hug her and say it's okay, because our grief sometimes will just stop us from having dreams or having, and when we're ready, these things will come in slowly but surely. Or maybe and it's just like, maybe what your specific tools aren't going to be what the other people's tools are. There's many different ways of perception, and I don't want to so you may not have the dreams, you may not have the smells, but the music may show up, or something odd will be happening. You'll think, what is this odd thing happening? It's driving me nuts. And take a moment and look around you and observe and receive those unusual signs and signals. And if nothing happens and nothing comes up, it's okay. It doesn't mean that no one is around you, or that you're the one left out in the cold, or this stuff doesn't exist. It doesn't work because it doesn't work for you. It just takes time. It takes time to
Yeah,
show
and I,
up.
and I think it's realizing that a lot of times they come when we need us. So, like, maybe take a
Mm,
look at what's going on in that sister's life, what's going on in
mhm,
that brother's life, and maybe they're
yeah,
seeking some guidance or needing that reassurance where, when the time is right for her, she will. But I really
yeah.
think a lot of people resist it too. Like, they'll want
There's
it,
the
but they fear it. And maybe they
mhm,
won't have, you know, clairvoyant, like a seeing, or a hearing, but they might just get feeling, and then they
feeling.
poo-poo it
Yeah.
away instead of going,
Right.
wait a minute, that felt really
That's a
familiar.
new, yeah, familiar, but it's new. I haven't experienced it in that way. And also grief does stop us in our tracks. It really does. And so the patience with your own self. I really want to feel dad's presence. I really want to know he's okay. And it's just not happening. Be patient with yourself. He's there. She's there. Your loved one is there in spirit. You just need time to catch up. to start that relationship.
Yeah, and we're all, we are all going to transition at some point.
Mm.
And so many people, whether the person's younger or older, you see it more in younger, of course, but even when someone's a lot older, people feel sometimes, sadly, that they're being punished or they did something wrong, that they got this
Oh,
loss or what they could have done to
yeah.
change it.
No.
And they'll go over it and they'll replay it. And it's like, no, it's just no, life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you, and it's tough. Well, let's see how we can do
Yeah.
this together. And that's another thing too. When you're grieving or you see someone grieving, a lot of times people come a lot in the beginning and they're always there to just really support you. And then my friend calls them drive-bys, that they all come all at once. And then as time goes by, less and less and
That's
less, and they'll call. They may say, I actually was talking to a friend today who, she and her husband were dear friends of mine. And I told her that we were going to be on here tonight. And her husband had passed of a glioblastoma. And within
oh,
2, 3 months after, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. So she had to go on these journeys of a lot of heartache as she lost other
mm,
relatives too in the process in the meantime. And she said the one thing is that people say to you, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And you don't even know because you just want to reverse time, right? She said, one little thing she would say is write it down. And even if it's a simple
oh,
saying, I could use a jar of peanut butter, right? She
yeah.
goes, you actually filter, not that it's a test, but you actually see somebody, one of those people may
Ooh,
show up with that. Just an example, a jar of peanut butter. And she said, really, when people are grieving and they're in that fog, consider maybe just going to their house and doing a mundane chore that we don't want to do on a good day, never mind a grief day. Like go
I
in and
know.
maybe do the dishes. And because depression also comes with loss for a lot of people. So she's just saying, actually just show up and just be present. And
Sometimes you
even if
don't,
it's just
yeah.
holding
Yeah.
space, yeah.
Yeah. So
It's
I mean,
because I really believe
yeah,
spirit comes to hold space with us. I
they
really do.
do.
I find, having been a hospice volunteer for a long time, years back in Massachusetts, but also having spent time with family members that are transitioning, it's just amazing how as we're here, you know, grieving the loss and the person transitioning, and I always see that when we're holding one hand,
Mhm.
the other hand's being held by spirit side that's there to welcome them
Absolutely.
and bring them home.
Absolutely.
And it
Yeah.
is a beautiful picture. And it's like, yes, all dogs do go to heaven. When people ask, are my pets there? Because you might even just see like a dog visually, like curled up up
Oh,
at the
yeah.
bottom of the
Oh,
bed,
absolutely.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
nice to know that what was hard, especially with COVID, and you probably saw this too, is that the restrictions. So someone's loved one would go into the hospital, whether it was COVID or a heart attack or an accident or whatever, and they couldn't be there. So the
Mm.
big fear was that so there was a lot of, I think, additional mental torment
Oh,
because the
yeah.
person couldn't
Mm.
get to them, you know? So they felt like, were they okay? Were they, did they feel I loved them?
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
wasn't there. And a lot of them are carrying it, and I love that when I do a session, unbeknownst to me when I started, that I actually would say to somebody, I just want you to know they're saying to me, they felt your love. I know
Yeah.
that you may not have been there, just this feeling I'll get. And they're like, no, that's one thing I can't. And I'm like, put it down because they
Yeah.
just, felt your love, and then maybe bring in who else may have been there to greet them.
Right.
And in one case,
Yeah.
I loved it because you could actually see the relief on the mother's face because one of her children had died prior to this one
Oh,
passing unexpectedly.
oh,
And he came in to say, got his back, mom, got his
oh,
back. And
oh,
she goes,
powerful. Very
yeah,
powerful.
so it's nice because and it's people want to believe, but it's hard for them to believe it
Mhm.
until they have that experience themselves.
It's really, yeah, till you have the experience yourself, it's really just so hard to know. And then when you do have the experience, and we all will have this experience. I remember this cartoon. Remember Bugs Bunny? cartoon, and he's like
Yeah.
the carrot, and they look around, they're doing some crazy scene. He goes, none of us are getting out here alive. We're all, it's kind of like true. But to learn about what happens with grief, to learn about when we lose, even when we go to the other side. This is one of the biggest things in being a medium and bringing mediumship to people. When you can bring a loved one through and they recognize them, it says to you, I'm going to be okay when I pass. Kind of, it's going to be all right. But I wanted to take just a quick moment, because we were talking for just a few minutes, and just tell everybody who you are. This is Raylene Sousa. She has a website, RayleneSousaMedium.com. She does have a Facebook page, and we're on Facebook Live, but look for Raylene Sousa Medium on Facebook. Just search her, you'll find her. And then she's also on Instagram, Raylene Sousa Medium, Raylene_Sousa_Medium. And you see a theme here. So I think if you just Googled Raylene Sousa Medium, you'll find her in lots of different places. Tell me just a tiny bit about your book and what is it called and where can people find it?
Well, the book is actually, I was just part of a compilation book called The Last Breath, where there were contributing authors. So I was more contributing author than the headliner type thing. But it was something I've always wanted to do, is to be published in a book. And I'm actually working on some different things, not necessarily metaphysical, that I'm hoping to bring to light at some point, So I love to write. I've written for magazines before. It's just something I enjoy. It's like sharing the thought, and maybe just opening someone's eye, making them smile, or maybe something just clicks. You never know, Unlike you've got those magnificent books behind you that you have authored and published. And I think it's wonderful. I really admire it, because a lot of us think about it, talk about it, but when you do it, that's the difference,
Well,
so it's
so we're going to be talking some more on the phone, Raylene, to kind of do this. I just want to stop. I've been watching people pop in and out of Facebook. That's why I'm looking down. But Lori Mangiri says hi, Raylene, and Nancy popping in to say hello.
Hi, Lori.
And Michael Liberty says hi. And Beth
Hi.
Colombo and Terry Toner just want to send love to you guys. And Beth says she was just going to call you. So look for Beth. And my friend Kim and Barbara Clinton.
Tell her.
She does. She owes you a call. And Ellen Powers Bent, and Susan Kellner, Laura Joseph, Susan Hall, Rachel and Gail, and Maria Bedro. And you guys have always wonderful to see you guys come and listen to us. I want to do a shout out. And Gwen Moore says hi. Yeah. Boy, this is Raylene. You're bringing them in. This is Raylene love here. It's great. But
I feel really blessed, because the one thing Spirit has done and brought into my life are beautiful friendships, whether through workshops or classes or engaging with clients. It's just been amazing how much I've learned, or how much I've been comforted, like my dad passed in September of 2020. And not to go into anything really personal, but he had a chronic illness like all of his life. I sat vigil so many times in the hospital, but he went to sleep. And it really taught me that even though people say, I want to go, if I go, I'm going to go in my sleep, right? There's still such a shock factor to people, even when that happens. And I hear about it a lot. Yeah. And as mediums, people say, well, you can probably talk to him all the time. I'm like, no, I think what it is that I'm very open to the science he brings. It's not that I can, but I do talk to him when I want to talk to him. I don't wait for him to invite me. I never did. I'd make the call if I wanted to.
Yeah. So why would you do it not in this side either? But it just, with mediums, in all honesty, every medium's different. Some mediums will go through just a miraculous exchange with a loved one who's passing, and that's beautiful. And some mediums, there are people who got up short. I had two parents that passed, one in 2014 and one in December 2019, so our dads passed kind of close together. And one, I just was distant. I didn't hear anything. And the other one I heard from, it took 3 weeks, and then I heard boom, boom, sign after sign. And it kind of, it's kind of, amazing how every loss is different, but we still, and I found that as I went through my grief, and I don't know about you, Raylene, but I couldn't hear or wasn't ready to hear anything. I was just overwhelmed with, how do I do my life differently now? How do I go through this? And then eventually um, embraced their spirits, and their spirits kicked me in the head and said, because you could talk to me, But, but
Yeah, he was pretty loud after it was like a week to the day through someone else who it's a whole long story. So I want to tie up the time here with it. But it's really interesting and it's really neat what he was, and I might share that sometime on a live. I think I have in the
yeah,
past
yeah,
because he was very present with name and nickname with coming through somebody else. And um yeah, it's a really neat situation. But I realized that you know, love is just incredible. And it's such a field of energy that you really can't capture it. And I really believe that we have that free will that goes on with us, that we carry on. So there's really no ending. So I think what's really
yeah.
helped me is knowing that dad's there.
Hmm.
He has an awareness, I have awareness. We have our own relationship. I actually even opened up and said a few things to him. I don't want to say to like make peace,
Hmm.
but just kind of like, dad, and
Hmm.
it just kind of like talking, and it's almost like I could hear it back, because when two
Good.
people are so much alike, right?
Yeah.
You know, so it was like, but that inner child, you still miss your dad,
Oh my
you miss
gosh.
your
Yes.
grandma, you miss the people
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
left such an impression. And for me, like I know with a lot of mediums, they have like a trauma or maybe an accident or
Hmm.
something in their life that's like a marked awakening as to
Right.
seeing and connecting with the other side. For me, I honestly just don't remember when I didn't, whether I talked about
Hmm.
it publicly, different Roman Irish
Hmm.
Catholic, taught Sunday school, very, very, yeah.
Hmm.
So, and I'm so grateful I have had such a spiritual base in my life um, to know that there's life after life too. It's just everybody has a different path. I believe in
Yeah.
getting there, right?
Right.
So about we all transition the same way, the same place. So
Yeah.
I remember one little story was, and I think through the eyes of children, and I love seeing life through the eyes of children. And the one thing that always stands out to me is when I was about 9 years old and my Nana passed away. And she had lived with
Mm.
me since I was a baby, since I was born. So she was like another parent in the
Yes.
house, right?
Yeah.
So we were in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and there's a nice little park called Atkinson Common, and it's got like a couple little freestanding castles, and it's just a really beautiful park. So my great aunt's house was like 3 or 4 houses down from the park, and I went for a walk, and it was at a time when 9-year-olds could just walk down to the
Hmm.
park down the street by themselves. So I did, and when I got in there, I was just walking around, and I sat down, and Nana was there, and I had this great conversation with her. And I went back to the house, and everybody's crying and talking and sharing stories and eating. And I'm like, why is everyone so upset? Nana's at the park. And the response was, she's going to be okay. They were so close. And I was like, you don't really even know as a child,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
how to even make of that, because it's not that it's, discredited, but it's not like open for discussion. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I say to people too, because there's a lot of children, especially nowadays, that are coming in very awake and aware. And I
Right.
say, don't pull it out of them. Don't
So,
encourage
yeah.
it. Just listen. If they say, hey, I saw, I've seen children that have heard stories of and actually met the different children just over time who would be talking about a grandparent they never met. They knew the name, they knew what they did, and the person was, what do I do with this? And I said, just listen,
Yeah.
just
Just
validate,
listen.
just
Yeah.
talk, don't
Yeah.
question, just let them share. And then
Right.
as they grow through life and they have their own life's experiences, and dealing with grief is
Hmm.
one of them, then they will unfold as it will naturally happen for them too.
Hmm.
Or a trauma could be invoked, something could happen.
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah.
not. They're
Yeah.
naturally evolved for
I
people,
know.
but what wakes people up, it's so different, So I love listening
Yeah.
when other mediums share their path of how they got to where they go. It's really interesting. It's really
Yeah,
interesting
it really is.
what
Yeah.
unlocked it, what opened it. So I know if it happens with different people randomly at different times, it's happening with so many
So
people.
many, even if they just still don't get Raylene wrong, that you can have an opening during the time of your grief. You may not move on to become a medium, but you may realize my grandma's talking to me. I remember my
Yeah.
grandmother passed at 18. I didn't know anything about mediumship, nothing, but I knew she was there. And whenever I got into trouble at 18 and then later on 24, 30, whatever, she had this signature feeling. I knew it was
Yes.
just something about
Yes.
what was
Yeah. Her
happening.
energy. Her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole room would change. It's like it was like a different sound in the room, a different color. And I would be she would remind me, hey, Nance, you're standing on the edge of the cliff, get away from it, or something like that. She showed up, or I allowed her to show up when I was in the worst of the funk. And then it was her that introduced me to mediumship, and I didn't connect the dots till I was much older. I wanted to talk to you about, Raylene. We mentioned this when we were doing the pre-show. Messages from spirit when they tell us they love us, even though through a medium or through whatever vehicle they use, even though they may never told us that they loved us when they were alive. That is a pretty significant experience that I've seen as a medium, bringing messages through. Well, he never said he loved me before. Are you sure it's my dad? Kind of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I know it will. It's for people just to be aware and awake that we're living with the human condition, our ego. It's always going to bring fear, doubt, and insecurity. And I think there's a lot of times that, their inner child just couldn't, relax, embrace, and love themselves enough to be able to love outside themselves. And unfortunately, a lot of children are very subject to that.
right.
Their parents may have gone through trauma or have had inner
Mhm.
conflict or don't know how to get it right. And I know some people they numb down, and I'll have, I'll have people going, yeah, he was my father, if you want to call him that. But I don't. I really don't want. Why is he here? And I'm like, well, actually, I just, we may bring up, like, I'm just going to randomly talk about a public thing where the woman had just gone through surgery and she almost passed. To know that he was there to hold her hand and be there for her, it was like,
Right.
she could validate it, but it was like, why him? Why not my warm, loving, fuzzy grandmother? It's because eternal progression is open to every human soul. And
Right.
when we transition, I always love to think about how we have our life review and we get to see how we made people feel good, bad, or indifferent. And I think we can actually learn to just let go and love. It's not that, I'm not saying we get it right the first time. I don't know. I figure when I
Yeah.
transition, I'll have my own experience with it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and hopefully be able to make amends for any shortcomings or anything I did to cause harm or
That would
cause
take
grief
about
to
3
someone
seconds for you,
unbeknownst.
Raylene. Like, I'll give you a minute and you'll be overtime. You're good. You're good. Just
Yeah.
kidding. But yeah, the Janet Havoc said this, and I've heard other mediums say this. It's like when when the spirit is coming through the medium, and it's healing for the sitter or the person receiving the message, but it's also very healing for those of them that are in spirit, and it may be part of their balancing their life out, or kind of coming to terms of what happened. So when the cranky old man comes through instead of the warm fuzzy grandma, um, there is a gift that you're giving to them in spirit to say thank you
Right.
and I love you too, because they may not ever heard you say I love you. You may have said it, but their filters and their human condition didn't allow them to hear it as well. So you're giving a gift back when you're letting spirit come in and give you those messages. It's a beautiful circle. I've seen that circle so many
Yeah.
times in sessions. I don't know if you have, but
Yeah. And a lot of times you can see that the person engaging in that person saying, I'm sorry, I love you, I should have maybe showed up for you. And the other person's like, I should have reached back,
yeah,
because it could have been attempts from this person in spirit who,
yeah,
especially toward transition, might be like, oh, I just want to make peace.
yeah,
But then they're rejected by the person they had rejected. So then the
right.
person goes, well, tell them I'm sorry too. And I'm like,
Mm,
you have the floor. You
yeah, yeah,
can talk
yeah.
to them. And I say to people too, because a lot of people are like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear this apology. And I said, you know what? You really don't have to accept it right now. You really don't. We have free will. If you're not comfortable, I said, but just think about this. Maybe some night when you're laying awake at like 2 in the morning, you're looking at the ceiling and you're thinking about that apology you always wish you'd gotten this side of the
Yes.
veil, but the person's
Yes.
gone. And so they can't walk up to you and go, sorry, or ring that phone. They did it in a way that maybe, just maybe, you can sit with it and go, wow, wow. They were able to gift me with that so I can have some peace and maybe let go of some stuff I've been
Right.
carrying around it and grow, because then
Yeah.
they, a lot of times for children especially, then they see their worth and their value and feel the love from a parent when they may not have.
Exactly. Even if it's adult children or not. But I had
Yeah.
this amazing experience. Well, first I want to say, when you're laying in bed thinking about, I wish I could have told him this, I wish he would have said this to me, they're sitting next to you in
Yeah.
spirit form saying, I really wish I would have said that to you. So the fact that you're having that thought about them, they're having that thought with you at the same time. I don't know, that it's kind of scary to think about that, but that thought didn't come out randomly. Lots of times that thought is brought by spirit to talk to you. I had this amazing reading once. My mom had passed, and it was a very difficult, a lot of difficulty things with my mom. Was very sick for like 17 years. And before that, we had troubles. She was one of, there was 9 of us all together, and she was overwhelmed constantly, and she kind of fell into a habit of anger. And I was the oldest, and I got through it. I grew up and got through it and was independent and all that stuff. But she passed, and that was it. I thought, well, that's it. And never got to really have conversations with her because of how ill she was for so long. And a medium, a very amazing, talented medium, said to me, do you know, she described my mother exactly how she was before she passed, which was amazing. And she said, your mother in heaven is looking at you, and she never realized that how hard she was on you and how it affected you. It never, ever occurred to her. And she's here telling me right now, I just figured that out. And I was crying. And that was the most amazing a reading I think I've ever had. She progressed in heaven, and she didn't have 9 kids to look after, and her health was good. So she was able to begin to put things together. And I
Right.
never, ever, ever thought I would see that. And I'm just sharing that now to encourage people to let the progression happen, let the progression
Right.
happen. And
And
so,
maybe also to teach people that even if, you know, that you can love detached. Sometimes there's someone who's off at a distance. They may have been in your life, but you carry this thing with you. You can love them detached and you can make
mhm,
peace with it. You can just send it
amen.
out. You can see them, say a little prayer for them, think a good thought for them. And, don't have expectations, or maybe put out that sometimes
Mm,
spirit will show me a short little olive branch. And that's a lot of times when I know that there's something going on since they're
mm.
passing with siblings or whatever,
Oh, what a
and I'm
lovely
like,
symbol. Yeah.
yeah, I get the little, but it's a little short olive branch. It's not a big long stick, it's just a little branch.
Oh,
And I'll be
yeah.
like, just extend it. I said, just consider it. I said, or it just depends on if it's for them or they should extend it. And they're like, well, I don't really want to. They should say, and I'm like, you don't have to do it but release it without
Mhm,
expectation.
mhm,
Maybe say it to them or make that phone call, send that card, express what you need to release in your
mhm,
part of it. And whether they accept it or not, or maybe you did wrong them.
mhm.
Maybe you did. And maybe you
Yeah.
want to make amends, but they're not picking up the phone. There are ways to do it, to go about it, that I think it's for your soul growth. Because if
Mhm,
people realize that we're here to solve, to evolve to our highest and best, if we want to
mhm.
sum it
Yeah,
up real
yeah,
quick that way,
yeah.
that we're accountable only for our own actions. So just
True.
because someone does this, or this, and we judge it or deem it wrong, it's not ours to judge. It's to open our
Right.
hearts up and be, and just, no matter if they do the right thing, try to do the right thing. And if you falter because you're
Yeah.
human, try
Yeah.
again.
Or if they're doing the wrong thing, and then they do the wrong thing again and do the wrong thing again. And you're very hurt. The person that you're picking up and the person that you're having compassion for is yourself. And we talked a little bit before the pre-show about when you lose family for other reasons. We lose family through death,
Oh,
but through divorce or through, divorce, you lose your family, that other family
yeah,
that came in that you loved for all those years. And
yeah.
and sometimes
Friends.
friends, you could drop out of your life. Sometimes broken trusts, where you've
Yeah,
trusted somebody and they just couldn't make it to the table anymore. And then there's people who just for some reason will erupt in anger and just need to control, and bully, and you can't, there's nothing you can do about it, and you just have to let it go. And in those instances, when we have these holidays where we're supposed to come together with family and friends and love them, we miss them terribly. That's when we really notice that they're not there. And I feel like I want to mention that in through the media. Well, how could a medium help you? But a medium can help you that life does continue. There is growth and there's learning, but sometimes you got to take that pause and say that this relationship isn't going to go there right now. And what do you do when you're grieving that relationship? To remember who your spirit is and to remember their spirit, and maybe say a prayer for them, and continue to forgive them. But to build trust within yourself, sometimes we have to step away from those that are hurting us, and trust that we are going to be okay. If this makes sense. Would you have any
no, it makes a lot of sense. Everybody handles it different. Some people hold things in, some people lash out. And I think it's just making peace with the place that you're at and really
Mhm.
looking at yourself and your part in it and see what you can do to maybe make amends. But once you've done it, you don't have to keep redoing it and redoing it and redoing it
Right,
and looking for
right.
how to blame, because most people miss the what they thought things should be like, the expectations they
Mhm,
had on it, the
mhm.
hopes, the dream, the security of, the Norman Rockwell picturesque stuff.
Yeah,
Real life is raw and not like that. Relationships, people, like, it's now that we've come into this, never mind the energy of connecting with spirit and stuff, right? They don't text us, right? They don't email us, right? It's like, so they have affect. We feel them when someone's mom steps in, and whether they were warm or cold or, loud or meek, we pick up on the energy. But when people are texting and they're connecting this way, especially in the generations, including our own, right? Because
right,
everybody's
right,
into this whole tech thing,
right,
you
right.
kind of lose that sense of intention. It
Mhm,
becomes more assumption. And
mhm.
instead of getting clarification, we can find ourselves going down a rabbit hole too of emotions and spiraling situations into directions that they really may not have been meant to spin off to. So I think
Right,
it's being concise and clear with your communication with people here and in the world of spirit.
right, right.
I think that there's, because there's the we all, we talk about like healing. It's funny because we look at a lot of times as mediums, we're healing between the worlds, but it would be
Yes,
so nice to give the message out that let's start to do a little bit of that now. So
yes,
it's
yeah,
not so rough later that you're not leaving someone here to carry the
yes,
burden of things left unsaid. Make that phone call, write that letter. So if they don't write back, they weren't anyway. I think
yeah.
that would really help healing become more orchestrated this side of the veil.
I think so. There's something to be said about what's important in life and what's important on the other side. And what we think is important in this life may not be important on the other side, but it was the compassion, the loving care, the kindness. And as we just said, the grumpy man that wanted to come back and say, I love you because they never said it. Why those stories are so important is because that's the key to life. That's what we're here for compassion, to love each other, to understand um, that we're spirits having a human experience, and to remember how to love ourselves and love each other through it. And that's probably the hardest thing you could possibly remember and do when you're all bottled up. But
People get, yeah, they get so caught up in like the material things, or, and
Yeah.
people need money to survive. Yes, it's a part of
Absolutely.
it. But sometimes people get to this place, and I'd be happy if, I'd be happy if, I'd be happy if. Well, there are moments in the journey that we should enjoy along the way
Yeah.
to that if. So when that happens, you can be
Yeah.
satisfied
No
and
more
enjoy it
ifs.
for a moment.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
happy now. I'm going to give Raylene a call because I really, we did this too. I did this. I called you for, I don't know how long, but I always liked you so much. And we never,
Oh,
connected. And I
thank
just
you.
kept calling you and calling you, calling you, because I knew that you would be the perfect person to just connect with. And I knew that because Spirit was telling me that.
Thank you.
Did you see what I mean? It's like,
Thank you.
but I'm telling that story to say to everybody out there, you got somebody on your mind, work it, reach out to them, and see, you never know what's going to happen. You just don't.
Yeah, and
And yeah, even if
I
it's
was just
like you're
saying,
thinking,
in some,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Oh,
You
sometimes we
just had a
think,
thought when
yeah,
you were
sorry,
saying that.
I know. So
Mhm.
sometimes that you think about, I see people thinking about, oh, so and so, I remember she did this and she blah, 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 she blah, blah. I'm like, stop a minute. You're thinking about her. The spirit or something within you is saying, we need to connect, we need to reconnect. So put aside the negative thoughts and follow through on that thought of connection. And connection leads to love, it leads to compassion, it leads to good things. So and that's the stuff that we take with us to heaven. That's the stuff that we work out. I mean, unless you know something better than I do, I don't think the bank account, it
Uh,
kind of
I
transfers over
profess
to
to know.
heaven.
No, I feel what's going to happen is that I can have the thoughts, or from my personal experience here, but it's going to be different than other people.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
love to keep open to it. That's the one thing I've always done too, is that yes, right now I'm in a spiritual ministry program with a Journey
mm,
Within in New Jersey, and sadly, our mentor, Janet Havoc, I know she was yours, had transitioned. But to think about the impact and the legacy she had on so many lives. Let me just share a little story, if I may, about
sure,
something
yes.
that our grandson passed in a car accident in April, Mark's son, right? And
So sorry, by the way.
Janet, I was in her program. She emailed me, she texted me, she called me, she wrote to me on Messenger, and I thanked her. I think you may have reached out too. And at that moment, I wasn't really I couldn't, we were just going through the motions, helping the parents out, just going through all
Mhm.
the motions, until I could sit with it, then I'd reach back. So out of the blue, one day, I said, I'm going to call Janet. And it was a couple months out, just to thank her. Yeah, I had done a
Mhm.
reply email thanking her, saying I'd be in touch. So she picks up the phone. It was her cell phone, which I found out since she's done it with so many people. So such a blessing to so many people. She picks up her cell phone, and I'm going away, talking away, and she's asking me, and how are you doing? And I'm sharing with her and thanking her. And I said to her, I go, yeah, I see you're coming to Maine in a couple of weeks. You're going to have some beautiful weather. And she goes, actually, I'm already here. And she was sitting having dinner with the person she was co-teaching
Oh
with
my
and
goodness.
other people, and never made me feel that I
Oh,
was taking her away from anything.
what what a
I says,
gift.
"Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were." She goes, "No, no, no." So here's this woman who has all these people like that she's done so much for.
Mhm.
And there was I mattered. And that in life, I think, is so nice, to leave people with that feeling. Yeah, she wasn't doing it because she was my mentor. She was doing it because that's who she is.
Yes, yeah.
She was, and she made me feel heard. She made me
Mhm.
feel like I mattered.
Oh
And
my
I just want to
gosh.
say that if we could just step up and do that for other people, and also be able to honor yourself if the time's not right, or if someone reaches
Mhm.
out, don't take the timing personally. Sometimes people are processing things the only way they know how to get through the
Right.
next day,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
she
So it's
knew
like, keep
that.
showing up.
Yeah,
Huh?
keep showing up. That's what the story with Janet is, that she kept showing up and she
You
knew
did.
where she was. And then when you were ready, she picked up. Didn't
Yeah,
matter.
she
She
could have
picked
just let
up.
it go to voicemail. She could have
Could.
just listened to what I had to say and call me back at, her convenience.
Mhm.
But right in that moment, she had no idea what I needed to talk about or say, and she just knew it was me with my number. It was really interesting.
That's lovely. Well, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that story.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very
Yeah, and I think that that's just a good example. We all just, if we can do our part to be there to love, support each other, and sometimes the timing may not be perfect for you to
Mhm,
even
mhm.
reach out, or respond, but maybe the key is just to just be present,
Yeah.
be present and show up and consistently show up, because sometimes, like my friend says, the drive-by grievers. I can't believe what she said that day. She was, yeah, the people
Drive-by
that when
grievers. Yeah.
something happens, they show up and they're there and they mean well, she said. She goes, but then they fall away. And she goes, later on, it's even harder because you don't even have them to distract you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And there comes a time when we all just have to sit with ourselves. We have to be with me and
Yeah,
me. And
yeah,
and that's when the spiritual tools come out. That's when your soul sits with you. That's when spirit's sitting with you. And that's when you say, just when you say, I can't take another step. That's when that's when we finally can open up and receive spirit. When you say, I can't take another step.
yeah.
Spirit steps in and steps for you. And I feel that surrender is key. And sometimes some of these struggles, I just give up. I surrender to this. And,
And I
and
think
then,
we're taught to pray in a certain way, that you pray for other people, but sometimes, it's like we say, if you need me, call me. Well, they're not. When I transition,
yeah,
if you need me, call me.
yeah,
If it's like they're there just waiting, but
yeah,
we want to acknowledge them and invite them in. So a lot of times I'll just say to people, just talk to them, start to talk to them. Even if you're driving down the road in the car, people just think you have a
mhm.
little ear thing in and you're on a call. Just talk, just enjoy it.
I
Go around the
know.
kitchen and turn the music on and dance and sing and raise your vibration to, open up so that they
Yeah,
even come in closer, because they know you're sad. It pulls it down. They want to see you have joy and rejoice
yeah.
in life.
They're not avoiding, spirit is not avoiding you just because you feel sad or angry. Anger is
Right, right.
a very sad. Grief and
Yeah.
anger all go together. It's like, how come you betrayed me by leaving? How come you did this? Why didn't you do that thing you said you were going to do and then you dropped dead? How did this happen? But they can handle it. And they're right next to us. They're walking with us. And so asking for help. And I like that, turning on music or just being with them in some way, and just let that wisdom or let that extra energy come in. And it's about surrendering to it, as I said earlier, but it's surrendering equals receiving. So oftentimes we're praying for other people or we're trying to help people or trying to figure it out. Put it down and receive what's there. um, it may seem like at first there's nothing there and it's a big void and it's empty and you can't feel anything. But if you do it, and then sometimes you can only sit there for 5 seconds, but then sit again another time and then sit again another time until you start to have that relationship with being quiet with the pain within yourself. And that's the surrender where spirit can step in and be present, because you're finally putting down the burden of being whatever you think you have to be, because even though you're grieving, to just simply being you in grief. And that's a state of grace. It's kind of how I have done it throughout my life. But
Yeah.
but I that's when spirit has shown up most for me. Um, and I've heard other people say that kind of a story too, that when they finally put it down and stopped struggling with it, spirit was able to wiggle their way in and talk to you.
And I think they give you a shift of perception. I think
Mm,
when we start to become enlightened that way, we have a little shift of perception, because they know life is for the living. They understand this is the human
mhm,
playground. So
mhm.
play. A lot of times people feel guilt.
Yeah,
Oh my God, I'm
yeah.
feeling good. Oh, I can't.
Oh,
They are not
please,
here to be able
yeah.
to feel that. And it's like,
Oh,
no,
no,
no, no,
oh,
no. And
no,
when you're dancing
no.
around and you're raising your vibration, they're
Mhm.
happy too. It raises
Oh,
joy in
yeah.
them. If you think about it, even like choirs of angels singing, or people, it's like lifting things, and it can be just, I don't prefer heavy metal, some people do.
Oh, They go to
whatever.
concerts with us. They go ski trips with
Yeah.
us. They say, I've never skied before in my life, and now I'm on the skis with you. Going, whoa, what are you doing? But spirit can experience life through us and be with us, next to us. So in so many ways. So let them come up, invite them here, and then see how they show up. I guess I can't say that enough. Invite them and then observe how they show up. Don't tell them how to show up, because they're not going to do it. I'm telling you, they're not going to do it. And they're not going to give you the lottery number either, but they will show up in very unique, loving, caring ways, sometimes really funny ways. But,
Yeah, that's for sure. My dad, I woke up one night out of the middle of a sound sleep and I heard the song Unforgettable playing with Nat King Cole and Natalie Cole's daughter. And it
nice.
hit me because I heard, "Hey, Ray." And that's my dad would always say, "Ray, hey, Ray." And it was so, I woke out of a sleep and I could hear that song playing.
Mm.
And that's the song that I danced with him at my wedding to.
Oh,
And
gosh.
I hadn't heard that song. I hadn't thought about that song. So then I go on Facebook a day or two later. You start watching a video and it scrolls to another video, and all of a sudden on comes Nat King Cole and his daughter Natalie with that song, the remake together, Unforgettable. So of course
Oh,
I listened to it and I was teary and I was like, "Thanks, Dad." I didn't think it was a coincidence at all because I hadn't listened to that song in years. You
I
know,
love
my
that.
son recently got married and my dad, his papa was very close to him, and my new daughter-in-law, her grandmother passed her in the year too. And we saw our son glare in all the wedding pictures. And when we watched it on the smart TV, they had a rainbow over their wedding. So I really
Mm,
love to credit my dad and her Nana that they were there, that love just, was all over
I
it.
love
So,
that.
and so it's really neat. Yeah, there's
It
been a lot
is.
of little things that have happened that it's nice to have it validated
Yeah.
too. That's all for me.
But well, I was in a I always say I don't really hear that much from my parents, and I think I'm lying to myself sometimes, but I was in a group demonstration as a grief group. And I was bringing through their loved ones and explaining how mediumship worked. And it was, they really loved it. They appreciated it. And then we went around the circle. They were just talking about Christmas holidays and who they were missing. And it occurred to me that I needed to share my story too. And so I shared my story about my dad passing December 26th and what that did, how that felt. Because Christmas Eve, I slept overnight with my dad in a coma. I'm trying not to get too a long story, but and so Christmas was very different that year. It was actually the Christmas of my divorce. It was my first Christmas alone after my divorce. And so it was huge. And I didn't know that I could feel any more pain than I thought I was just up to here. So I was explaining this story and how my dad had given me a beautiful gift at his passing, and someday I'll tell it, but I can't tell it just yet. It's still really emotional. And after I shared this, and I said, they were all said, "That's fine that you shared. That's great that you shared." So I didn't want to make it about, me, but they said, "No, hearing a medium talk about how they experienced death was very important to them." So the next day I get up and I'm kind of doing my stuff, getting ready to do all the social media stuff you're supposed to do. And there, my dad's picture showed up from like 6 years ago. And, the memories picture, how they throw a picture out from your memory. And there he was making this face at me. He was making his smiling with his goofy face. I burst out laughing. It was the funniest thing ever. And I said, my parents do talk to me all the time. There's my dad. I said, "Oh, thank you, Dad, for letting me share that story, and thank you for showing up." And it was really, really sweet. And they surprised the heck out of you. I said, I guess that's one of the
Mm.
messages from those loved ones. It's not what you expect, and they surprise the heck out of you.
It
Let
was a
them.
reaction that made you laugh. And
Yeah,
it brought
yeah,
back a good memory and a good trait. So I
yeah.
think I think that's what's so important, and just yeah, just I really, like I say, until someone has their own experience, I love it when someone says to me, okay, I'm only here because they made me come. And I'm like, oh gosh, no,
Oh, yay.
why do you do that?
Try to
Now it's
enjoy
gonna go
this.
to him. Yeah, no, and I don't even do it on purpose. I'm like, I know who's gonna be that,
Yeah.
and it's just they go, I don't know what you do or how you do it, but how'd you know that? I didn't. You validated that it's true. I felt it. I shared
I
it.
shared it.
But
Yeah.
I love seeing that because all I hope is that in the sacred communication that it is, it's that it just that little tiny seed just starts to sprout, and then they'll tell their story and give hope to somebody else,
Mhm,
and they'll tell
mhm,
their story. And I
mhm,
may never have
mhm,
to sit with those other people. That's
mhm.
fine. I don't that's not my it's not my goal. My goal
Yeah.
is that they know and can start to trust in spirit that there truly is life after life. But all the promises that have been
Yeah.
made and what we've heard
True
about it,
that.
that it's not an ending. You're not waiting to go anywhere. Whether it's a heart attack, a car accident, a murder, or suicide, you transition the same, you end up in the same place
Agree.
and you're
Which
never
the good
alone.
place. It's a loving, caring, like,
Yeah,
oh wow, this is really cool
yeah,
here. I didn't know this is gonna be
yeah,
so good. I would have left here sooner. But
yeah.
they're yeah, it's a it's you're going home. You're going home. And which makes me think, are we not home here? I've been trying, but but there is a completion and it's there's a good ending to this story. The good ending to this story. It is
Yes.
hard to
So
feel it, it's hard to know it, but
yeah, I think the takeaway really for people at the holidays is do you. Just do you. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. If you
yeah,
say, yes, I'm going to go and I'm going to, join all of you people, and then you wake up that day and you're like, I just can't do it. It's okay. Or maybe
okay.
go for a little while and just say, I don't know how long you're going to stay. And the people that are around you,
Mhm,
hopefully will understand that and honor you,
mhm.
and just show up for people. You don't have to ask. Which one thing my friend did say though, she goes, please not 8 dishes of lasagna. She, what are you saying? She goes, I'm telling you, she goes, with all the loss and all the illness, it's so nice when people show up, but it's always a pasta dish. So I laughed. I said, okay, next time I'm going to remember that. And I'm not giving any pasta dishes or
Big
casseroles.
bowl
I'll
of
drop off a
fruit
couple
or
steaks or salad or something. And she just laughed. She makes me laugh because she's really handled her loss with grace.
oh,
Like she really
wow.
has made other people feel better. But this is the second Christmas, and she told me tonight, no ornaments up, no lights, no nothing.
So
She did
yeah,
Christmas a week ago, because her daughter moved out of state. She went there. She's home. We'll see what she does. Probably do
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know, take a walk. Who knows? It
yeah,
doesn't matter. She's just going to enjoy the moment. She's always welcome
yeah,
with me, but she may not opt for that. So
yeah.
that's okay too.
Well, it's
So,
okay. When the first year after my dad passed, I tried to put up a tree and I ended up in tears, swearing at the tree because the lights wouldn't turn on and I just gave up. And but then the year after that there was no tree, and then the year after that there was a tree. So
mhm,
so it's
yeah.
okay that it takes time. It
Throw
it
out the
does.
rule book and just live, just be,
Yeah.
just throw out the rule book
Throw
because
out the Christmas tree lights, whatever. Throw out the
it
old stuff. Get the
doesn't
thing that
matter.
works. Yeah. But
Yeah, it
be
doesn't
good
matter.
to
All
yourself, I
that's
think.
so
Yeah.
minor.
So
Yeah.
so in the holiday season, who you want to bring to the table is you, and have compassion for yourself and care for yourself and know that you're just as important as the people that you miss. So bring yourself home and give yourself lots of love. And the best you could do is the best you could do. And love yourself for that. That's because in the end, there's love there. And the more that we love ourselves, the more that we know that others love us too. So that's the best message I feel like we could bring forward
Yeah.
this time.
If there was like a little light switch, you could just click on everybody,
I
and
know,
just
I
say,
know.
hey, just go be. But
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
it's
I
self-awareness,
know.
it's soul growth, and it's like there's no rule book, and it's just honoring where you're at in the moment and being okay with it.
Yeah,
Nobody else has to be okay with it. You have to be
be
okay with
okay
it.
with it. That's it.
Yeah.
So
And
we're gonna
give
have
other
to,
people,
yeah. We give other people
yeah.
Yeah, and then to have compassion for other people, the people who are going through
Yeah,
it.
give them the same grace that you give
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah, yeah,
so.
exactly. So we're going to have to wind down a little bit. We could go on for another
Yeah.
hour. This is a great topic, but I want to remind people that Raylene is Raylene Sousa medium.com, RayleneSousa medium.com. And it's on the artwork. You'll see her name is on her website, Facebook's same thing, Raylene Sousa Medium, and then Instagram, Raylene Sousa Medium. And you'll find her wherever you go. And please look her up. I bring people on to this podcast so that you could have really quality, beautiful, wonderful people who can support you
Thank you.
with your tools and with what you need to go through. We're not meant to go through this stuff alone. So use the resources that you have around you. And Raylene is an amazing resource. So
Sure.
for
Thank
now,
you so much.
you're
As
so
are you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And you can see the recording later. It's going to be up on AngelScapes podcast, and you could reach out to me at angelscapes.net or Nancy at angelscapes.net. And if we could support or help you anytime through this season or anytime at all, reach out. We're pretty regular people, and we'd love to hear from you.
Right.
And yeah,
It's one thing, down to earth.
yeah,
That's the only way to
yeah.
be real. Keep it real and authentic. That's all it
Right,
is. We're in this
right.
together. As I started when we first started saying we're in this together, you're not alone. So it's
Yeah.
true, just reach out, and never hesitate, so.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Absolutely.
everyone for
So
joining too.
yeah, it's
You
been a
know,
wonderful group. Would say to Maria and Anna and Donna and Joanne and Tammy, and like, I'm really grateful for all the showing up, and I give everyone love, and everybody who couldn't be here, who hears this again later, just have a beautiful season, beautiful turn of the year, and may you all learn to use your spiritual toolbox to find healing and happiness and joy in your life. So with that,
Thank you for joining the AngelScapes podcast. We hope you've gained new insights and inspiration for your journey to uncover and access your soul's power. For more information and a deeper dive into finding clarity in your life, go to AngelScapes.net. Remember to subscribe so you can be part of the discussion. It may just change your life. See you next time.